Hi and welcome back to the workbench. Today we're going to take a look at one of my older locomotives. In fact, this little fellow has been waiting for its time on camera for a very long time, as other projects kept leapfrogging him. Here is my Hornby Caledonian 040 saddle tank number 270 that arrived with me shortly after 1981. While a simple model, she has a metal chassis and runs surprisingly well. Catalogue number R057 was produced between 1980 and 1992 with an astonishing 45,000 models made. The model is presented in attractive Caledonian Railway blue livery. On the underside we see that she is indeed Hornby and still carries the Made in Britain boast. The model has been in the Hornby range since 1980, initially in Caledonian Railway blue. The simplified 1983 Smoky Joe version omits the wire handrails that had been present on the earlier variants. The model is based on Loco 56025, which was an early 264 or 611 class built in 1890, and for its working life was primarily based at St Rollock's Works, where it was work shunter until its withdrawal in 1960. Now then, my Loco number 270 is joined by a slightly later in the shape of Loco 627, done out in beautiful Lancashire and Yorkshire livery. Hornby code R150, they were produced as seen between 1986 and 1992, with some 24,000 models produced. Now then, this model is extra special, as it was a very kind gift from Sean Gravel, aka Seanboy1984 on YouTube. Sean kindly donated the little engine to me, as he has a policy of one in, one out, and he wanted her to come to a good home and get a good service. Sean, thank you mate. So I decided that I would do a first for this channel and make a double service video where we'll look at my earlier pug and Sean's slightly later one and service both on camera. Let's begin. The models are powered by small 12-volt HP motors of the same type used in scale-electric slot cars, but that does not mean they can't run well and controllably, as I hope we shall see. Welcome to the servicing section. Let's see how they run before anything's done. A little bit lumpy. But okay, once it gets going, this is completely bone dry. Not had anything done to it for many years. Send her off up the line. And now let's see how this one goes. Bit of a knock, bit dry, but otherwise, again, not bad. These mechanisms are so reliable. So let's start by opening up the Locos. Now this one, my one, has been opened so many times it's now quite loose, but basically you stick a fingernail under there between the metal chassis and the plastic body and pull, and we're in. I'm expecting this one to be a lot tighter, but same thing, fingernail under the front, just prise up, then lift gently, and she lets go. So we are open, and you can see there are two different designs of the same motor. This one's actually smaller, if you look. So the body of the original motor is 25mm, whereas this one is 20. So that's what the black plastic spacer at the back there that you can see is. So they found a way to cheapen it a little bit more. These were really good, the HP motors. They were scale electric fitted, but when used like this they're just going to last forever because they're designed for such harsh usage that they just go on and on and on. These ones, I'm not sure, but again, I've had plenty of these through the workshop and never had a problem. Very simple servicing, and let's crack on with the next step. Okay, got the magnifying glass on to make it better for you, so let's have a little look. You would release the motor by just lifting these clips. You see they're ready to come out there. Just make sure the camera can see, and you pull it back and that goes over across the front of the motor and it would come forward, but there's no need to do it on this occasion. There's nothing to be gained by doing it. These, the original HP motors, you can see the slots for the brushes there, where the brush spring wire pushes in, and you can see there is absolutely masses and masses of brush left, so no problems with a motor lasting a lot longer. It's just a case of clearing out any little hairs that you find in and around the worm. There usually is some. They're like little hoovers. They'll suck up anything that's around, and just clear that back. And then we've got a few oiling points at the back of the motor. We've got one there, of course, not too much trouble, and at the front, just there behind the worm, and that's the one to be careful of because it's against the brushes. Then of course we're going to want to put some grease on the worms because they do wear. I've seen these worn right down. And one of the most important areas to lubricate on these is the axles, so that they don't wear through the chassis, particularly on the plastic chassis versions of these. So it's easy enough either side of the pinion there to get down. Look at the muck coming out there, and have a drop of oil either side of that. These are less so. You can push them over as much as you can, but there's very limited space to get in at the back between the chassis and the wheel. Another area that we need to be really concerned with is the backs of the wheel pickups. You can just see it there. There we are. Can you see it moving at all on the camera? And you can see the big lump of fluff on it, which is just come out there. So they need to be cleaned, very important. Probably get a fine needle in there and just flick out any muck. And then of course we want to clean the backs of the wheels. And bear in mind when you come to do that, that the pickups tend to run on this ridge piece at the back of the wheel, not quite up the top. So that's the bit you need to keep clean. We're now having a look at Sean's one, his kind donation. Of course the biggest difference is the smaller motor, which actually has "Made in Hong Kong" written on the back of it. So that dates the model, doesn't it? Very much so. Brushes we can't see. I imagine they're just a conventional type inside, and this probably is the replacement motor for the scale electric motor, but how strange that it's that much shorter. You can see what's missing. Not too much to do, not any hairs and things. Remains of the grease on the worm. We've got a suppressor capacitor there. 3 oiling points again, so back of the motor through that little tube, and then a tiny bit at the front there, and then grease onto the worm. Underneath it's virtually the same story as before, or we do have more room to get the oiler in at the backs of the axles, so that's nice. You can see there's a little bit of wear there. I've got a bit of side to side already, but it's not too bad. And you can see the wheel picking up there again. This is on all wheels. There's no shorting through chassis or anything, so they just have to be flicked clean to make sure they're okay. And when it comes to the lubricant, just use a cocktail stick to help work it deep into the middle grooves around the worm, like I'm doing there. And of course you can rotate the motor on this motor by using the armatures. I'm just making sure that that grease is in the grooves. So one way to get the oil down onto the back axles, if you do find you've got barely any room, like on this one, this is my one, is just to run the oil on the top there of the wheel and leave it stood up for a while. As it floats down, then you will just then have to pay particular attention to cleaning the excess oil off the backs of the wheels. And whilst we're oiling, of course, don't forget the coupling rods, just as important on these little things as on the big Locos. You've got the 3 points, the pistons, and the 2 crank pins, and that will just keep them running nice and smooth. So it's time to look at Sean's loco. Okay, we're just looking at Sean's one, and one of the things I noticed is we've got this little bit of a lump with the piston there, see it catching. Not quite sure why. Gonna have to have a good look at that. That's the point where it does it. Just back it up a little bit. Yeah. Have a good look and see what's going on there. It is actually a totally different chassis. It is a plastic chassis. You've got a metal running plate, whereas my one is all metal. So things have certainly changed a lot, haven't they? Well, that's that fixed. And you know what it was? A little tiny git of plastic moulding inside the front of the cylinder. I just passed a tweezer down there and it drew it out, and that was just enough to make it catch. So that's now fixed. Pleased about that. So just looking at the fronts of the Locos, there's something that catches my eye, and that is that they have the correctly modelled Caledonian type of star behind the smoke box door latch, although they don't, either of them have the actual smoke box door dart or latch or whatever you want to call it. But I do wonder if it would be worth picking out that star in a brighter colour. It's a sort of a brassy, bronzy colour, but maybe silver would work. Something to think about, I think. No sooner said than done. Having checked online, it's quite a feature of the Locos, so it's done. All the aid of a sort of a goldy bronze Sharpie pen. Small little detail, looks rather good, I think. But did you know that these locomotives were designed by Dougal Drummond of T9, M7 and 700 class fame on the London South Western? The Pugs were built by Nielsen and Company in 1885. These locos were classified as 0F and designed for dockyard shunting. They only carried a small amount of coal in the cab side coal boxes. If more was needed, a small wooden wagon was attached and coal shovelled forward by means of a trapdoor in the rear of the cab. Now this rectangular hole makes sense. Adding a coal wagon is going to be a must, I think. They carried 600 gallons of water and had a tractive effort of 10,601 pounds. There were 28 built.